mix obtained from the poppy is about 12% morphine and was described by the Sumerians as Hul-Gil, or plant of joy. The Babylonians soon became aware of opium's numbing effects, and the plant, along with their empire, next spread to Persia and Egypt. The ancient Egyptians also made crude sedatives out of the mandrake fruit, which contains psychoactive agents that can cause hallucinations. In India and China, cannabis incense was used to promote a feeling of relaxation, sometimes alongside a cup of wine. According to eyewitness reports, Bian Ke, an early Chinese physician who practiced in the mid-300s BC, was said to have used a toxic drink to induce a comatose-like state in two patients for several days. 5 centuries later, Chinese physician Hua Tuo is said to have used a combination of sedating herbs he called Mummification, which would be dissolved in wine for a patient to drink before surgery. Pretty crazy. According to surviving records, Hua Tuo performed many surgeries with the help of this mixture, but its exact recipe was lost when the physician burned his own notes shortly before his death. During the Middle Ages, Arabic and Persian physicians discovered that anesthetics could be inhaled as well as ingested. Persian physician Ibn Sina, also known by the Latinized name Avicenna, described in the 1025 Encyclopedia the canon of medicine, a method of holding a sponge infused with narcotics beneath a patient's nose. By the 13th century, the English were using a mixture of bile, opium, bryony, henbane, hemlock, lettuce, and vinegar called dwale as a sedative. This potion was not administered by physicians who warned against its use, possibly because some of the ingredients can be poisonous. Recipes to make the mixture were found in remedy books that ordinary housewives could tuck right next to their cookbooks. By 1525, Swiss physician Paracelsus had discovered that the compound diethyl ether had analgesic properties. But it would take more than 2 centuries before physicians would start to consider using it as anesthetic. These practices all had various levels of success and plenty of risks, but nothing was foolproof when it came to surgical anesthetic. In fact, by the turn of the 19th century, surgery was performed only as a last resort, usually with very little, if any, anesthetic. Not surprisingly, this caused immense fear and pain for patients, and extreme anxiety for the doctors who had to operate on them. Thankfully, the discovery of gases like oxygen, ammonia, and nitrous oxide in the late 1700s gave scientists new ideas, and physicians and patients some new options. English physician Thomas Beddoes was one of the first to take notice of the new discovery of gases. Beddoes founded a medical research facility called the Pneumatic Institution in 1798. His aim was to find therapeutic ways to use different gases. Beddoes hoped to treat breathing issues like asthma and tuberculosis. While working at the Pneumatic Institution, chemist Humphrey Davy, who would later go on to invent the field of electrochemistry, discovered that nitrous oxide had analgesic effects. He also noted that it produced a feeling of euphoria, which prompted him to call it laughing gas. Davy suggested that nitrous oxide gas should be used during surgical procedures. This idea was not immediately acted upon, perhaps because Davy himself was not a physician. In 1813, Davy was joined by a new assistant, Michael Faraday. Faraday began studying the inhalation of ether and found it to also have analgesic effects, as well as having the ability to cause sedation. Even after he published his findings in 1818, ether was mostly ignored by surgeons too. But strangely, in the United States, these gases found another use when people realized they could be inhaled recreationally at laughing gas parties and ether frolics. By the mid-1800s, traveling lecturers and showmen would hold these unusual gatherings. Members of the audience were encouraged to inhale nitrous oxide or ether, while other audience members laughed at the mind-altering results. One of the participants of these ether frolics was a young dentist named William Morton, who was intrigued by the analgesic potential of the gas. He tested it on animals and then successfully used it for several patients. After that, Morton was so confident in ether's ability to anesthetize that he offered to demonstrate his method to Dr. John Warren, the surgeon at Massachusetts General Hospital. On October 16, 1846, before a large audience in what is now known as the Ether Dome, Morton administered diethyl ether to a young patient named Edward Gilbert Abbott. Warren then removed a tumor from Abbott's neck. To the surprise of everyone in attendance, even the surgeon, Abbott appeared to remain comfortable during the entire procedure. Afterwards, Abbott reported that he'd felt a scratching sensation, but no pain. News of Abbott's surgery quickly spread around the world. By December 1846, physicians in Great Britain were making use of inhalation anesthesia. Scottish obstetrician James Young Simpson first used chloroform in 1847. The use of ether and chloroform made surgery a less distressing venture for patients and surgeons alike. The success of the compounds led to more anesthesia research. The first intravenous anesthesia, sodium thiopental, debuted for human use in March 1934. In the second half of the 20th century, Belgian doctor Paul Janssen synthesized more than 80 pharmaceutical compounds, including drugs used for anesthesia. Ether and chloroform fell out of favor as safer anesthesia alternatives became available. Modern anesthesia is among the safest of all medical procedures. Surprisingly, however, scientists are still uncertain exactly how anesthesia is able to affect our conscious minds. crossing the near hog line, and the rock must cross the far hog line, or it's hogged, removed from play. Good sportsmanship is prized, and players are even expected to call their own fouls. Very interesting. My dad was a curler, so that's funny. Yeah, my mom said one of their first dates was that my dad was like, "Wanna come watch me curl?" And she was like, "Sure." So, if that's not romance, I don't know what is. Alright, next are animal facts, and we are going to do facts about rodents. Rodents are the largest group of animals, constituting nearly half of the class of Mammalia's species. The world's 4,000 known rodent species are divided into 3 suborders: squirrel-like rodents, mouse-like rodents, and porcupine-like rodents. Rodents include not only true rats and mice, but also diverse groups like beavers, marmots, pocket gophers, and chinchillas. Chinchillas have the thickest fur of all land animals, with more than 50 hairs growing from a single follicle. Like other rodents, a chinchilla's teeth never stop growing. Chinchillas are native to the Andes Mountains in Chile. Their thick fur allows them to survive harsh winds and plunging temperatures at elevations of 12,000 feet. Some people keep chinchillas as pets. Only a few thousand survive in the wild. Mice can get by with almost no water. They get most of the moisture they need from their food. Mice become sexually mature at 6 to 10 weeks and can breed year-round. Female mice average 6 to 10 litters annually. If a pair of mice started breeding on January 1st, they could have as many as 31,000 descendants by the end of the year. Measuring over 2 feet tall, 4 feet long, and weighing an average of 100 pounds, the South American capybara is the largest rodent in the world. Capybaras love the water and can remain submerged for up to 5 minutes. Rats can jump 3 feet straight up and 4 feet outward from a standing position. Rodents spread myriad diseases, including bubonic plague, leptospirosis, tularemia, salmonellosis, murine typhus, and A single beaver can fell an aspen tree with a 6-inch diameter in about 20 minutes. It then gnaws the tree into logs of a more manageable size and drags these logs back to the river. Beavers live in colonies of 6 to 8 and build dams and the lodges they live in. Porcupines look a little like hedgehogs, but they are not related. In fact, hedgehogs aren't rodents at all. The average porcupine has 30,000 quills, and each is a sharp reminder that if you poke at a porcupine, it will poke you back. Baby porcupines are born with soft quills that don't harden until a few days after birth, a fact for which mother porcupines are supremely grateful. Oh my gosh. Porcupines can float. The Belluchistan pygmy jerboa is the world's smallest rodent at 1.5 inches long. Pocket gophers, named for their large fur-lined cheek pockets, can close their lips behind their protruding chisel-like front teeth. This allows them to excavate soil without ingesting it. Voles have blunt noses, small furry ears, dense brown fur, and a tail with no fur. Voles typically live about 3 to 6 months. Marmots are giant land squirrels. Flying squirrels glide through the air using parachute-like wings. A squirrel can smell a nut buried under a foot of snow. The naked mole rat, a burrowing rodent native to East Africa, is almost completely hairless with wrinkly skin. Alright, those are your rodent facts. One thing I thought was cool that I learned in genetics class, I think, was that rats have like one of the best senses of smell of any animal. And so like they theoretically would be the best at like sniffing out, drugs or like whatever. It's just that we can't use them because by the time you train a rat to know how to like smell stuff, it's gonna die. Like they don't have a long enough lifespan to train them to do something, which I thought was cool. So we use like dogs and stuff. But yeah, the next category is planet Earth, and we are going to do facts about North America. North America is the world's third largest landmass with an area of 9,449,078 square miles. Only about 8% of the world's population live in North America. The United States is the world's third most populous country with an estimated 334,234,000 people. North America has no landlocked countries. Central America refers to the 7 countries of North America between Mexico and South America: Belize, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Panama. Honduras is the only Central American country without an active volcano. Mexico City, Mexico is the highest North American capital with an elevation of 7,349 feet. North America was first populated about 10,000 years ago when people moved across the Bering Sea between Siberia and Alaska. Bermuda is the most densely populated country in North America with 3,200 people per square mile. It's not really true because Bermuda is not a country. Bermuda is part of the UK. But maybe most densely populated island. Groups of mountain quail native to western North America often walk up to 5,000 feet in the winter were sacred to the ancient Maya. Nearly 4 million people of Maya descent still live in southern Mexico and Central America. North America's longest mountain chain is the Rocky Mountains, which stretch 3,000 miles across the U.S. and Canada. Grenada, nicknamed the Spice Island, is one of the world's leading sources of nutmeg and other spices. The Panama Canal divides North and South America. The world's longest shared border is the 3,987-mile boundary between the United States and Canada. That doesn't include Canada's 1,539-mile border with Alaska. Approximately 90% of Canadians live within 100 miles of the U.S. border. Alaska's Denali, or Mount McKinley, is North America's highest point at 20,308 feet. Grant's Caribou of Alaska and the Yukon Territory of North America travel up to 2,982 miles per year. Lake Superior is North America's largest lake and one of the largest freshwater lakes on the planet. Canada has up to 3 million lakes, more than all other countries combined. Bracken Cave outside of San Antonio, Texas, is the world's largest bat cave. An estimated 20 million Mexican free-tailed bats roost in the cave from March to October. The Yosemite Falls are North America's highest waterfalls, dropping 2,425 feet. Hawaii's Mauna Kea is the world's tallest mountain as measured from base to summit. Its base begins 19,685 feet below sea level. Total height estimates range from 32,700 to 33,474 feet. The Canadian Arctic archipelago consists of 36,563 islands. Canada has the longest coastline of any country in the world by far. Off the coast of Belize in the Caribbean Sea is the Great Blue Hole, a submarine sinkhole measuring more than 1,000 feet across and 400 feet deep. Haiti and the Dominican Republic share the island of Hispaniola. Cuba is the largest Caribbean island with a total area of 42,803 square miles. The Mississippi River runs 2,202 miles from Minnesota down to the Gulf of Mexico. An earthquake on December 16, 1811, caused parts of the Mississippi River to flow backwards. That's cool. I always have to apologize about all of the American measurements. I'm sorry, it's all in miles and feet and everything. Yeah, I don't know. I can't help it, so I can't really change that. But okay, so next is facts about history, and the facts we are doing are about mummies. So let's talk about mummies. Ancient Egyptians might be history's most famous embalmers, but they weren't the first. In northern Chile and southern Peru, modern researchers have found hundreds of pre-Inca mummies, roughly 5,000 to 2,000 BC. The Chinchorros mummified all walks of life, rich, poor, elderly, didn't matter. One of the oldest known instances of deliberate mummification comes from a rock shelter, now called Uwan oldest known Egyptian mummy dates to around 3300 BC. As Egyptian civilization advanced, professionals formalized and refined the process of mummification. Natron, a mixture of sodium salts abundant along the Nile, made a big difference. If you extracted the guts and brains from a corpse, then dried it out in natron for a couple of months, the remains would keep for a long time. During mummification, ancient Egyptians removed all internal organs except the heart. The heart was left in the body because the Egyptians believed that as the seat of intelligence and emotions, the person would need his heart in the afterlife. The canopic jars used to store a mummy's internal organs are named after the local god Canopus. Canopus is also a town in the Nile Delta region. The entire mummification process took 40 to 70 days in ancient Egypt. Many people were employed in mummification, including the embalmer, cutters, priests, scribes, servants, and other workers. In ancient Egypt, chief embalmers often wore a mask of Anubis, the god of mummification and the afterlife. Only the rich in ancient Egyptian society could afford to be mummified. Egyptians used vast amounts of linen to mummify a body. There was enough linen on one mummy from the 11th dynasty to cover 3 tennis courts. Ancient Egyptians mummified animals, including cats, jackals, baboons, horses, birds, gerbils, fish, snakes, crocodiles, bulls, and hippos. The most popular mummy in the world is likely Vladimir Lenin. Millions of people have visited his mummy in Moscow, Russia. Mummies have been found on every continent except Antarctica. The Spirit Cave mummy is the oldest mummy found in North America. Unearthed in 1940 in Nevada, the naturally preserved 9,400-year-old was shrouded in woven reed mats and a rabbit skin blanket. The oldest well-preserved mummy in Europe is Otzi the Iceman, a natural mummy from 3300 BC found in the Alps. Another famous mummy is Lady Di, who died around 168 BC. Lady Di's are some of the best preserved human remains ever discovered in China. She was buried in an immense tomb in China and unearthed in 1968. Shin Zui was married to Li Kang, the Marquis of Dai and Chancellor of Changsha Kingdom in ancient China. The contents of Shin Zui's tomb revealed much previously unknown information about life in the Han Dynasty. Perhaps the most famous mummy in history is that of Egypt's boy king Tutankhamun. British archaeologist Howard Carter and his financier friend Lord George Carnarvon opened Tutankhamun's burial chamber in early 1923. 2 months later, Carnarvon was dead. His death is often offered as proof of the curse of King Tut. The inner coffin of Tutankhamun is made of solid gold, weighing 296 pounds. Pharaoh Ramses II was the first mummy to receive a passport needed for travel. His listed occupation is king. Peruchico, a site near Lima, Peru, contained more than 2,200 mummies. In Victorian England, mummy unwrapping parties were popular. The Egyptian mummification that I'll read because I think that's cool. Wash and ritually purify the body. Remove intestines, liver, stomach, and lungs. Embalm them with natron and place in jars. Stuff the body cavity with natron. Remove the brain through the nose using a hook and throw the brain away. Cover the body with natron and place on embalming table for 40 days. Wrap 20 layers of linen around the body, gluing linen strips together with resin. Then place the mummy in a protective sarcophagus and add another layer of wrapping. Pretty cool. Alright, moving on to the food and drink category, and our food and drink category today is alcohol. Alcohol facts. The name whiskey is the result of a mispronunciation of the Gaelic I can't pronounce that. Oh my gosh. Beata, which literally means water of life, and was commonly used to refer to distilled liquor. I can't pronounce that, I'm very sorry. The oldest evidence of alcoholic beverages ever found dates as far back as 7000 BC in China. The workers who built Egypt's Great Pyramids may have received their payment in beer. It takes about 6 minutes for alcohol to start affecting the brain. The Code of Hammurabi, ancient Babylon's set of laws, stipulated a daily ration of beer for citizens. Gin and tonics originated as a way to make anti-malarial medication more palatable. Sloe gin isn't gin at all. It's a liquor made with sloe berries, blackthorn bushberries. About 600 grapes go into 1 bottle of wine. Wow. As they age, white wine gets darker and red wine gets lighter. It can take 40 years for vintage port to reach full maturity. Every bottle of champagne has an estimated 49 million bubbles. The world's oldest existing bottle of wine was buried in AD 350 in Germany. It was found again in 1867 and is now on display at a museum. California produces more wine than any country in the world, with the exception of France, Italy, and Spain. Kentucky produces all but 5% of the world's bourbon. That's nuts. Tequila has no worm in it. Mezcal does, although it's not even a worm, it's a moth larva. Early thermometers often contained brandy instead of mercury. Despite the perceived warming effects, alcohol actually lowers your body's temperature. A particularly drunken Christmas party at West Point Academy in 1826 resulted in a riot and 19 people being expelled. The incident became known as the Eggnog Riot. During Prohibition in the United States, doctors could still prescribe whiskey to patients. This loophole helped a Walgreens grow exponentially in those years. Prohibition in the U.S. created a boom for Canadian distillers, and rye, the Canadian name for Canadian whiskey, became part of the national identity. Rye is generally sweeter than bourbon and retains a worldwide following among liquor connoisseurs. The exact origin of absinthe is unknown, but the strong alcoholic liquor was probably first commercially produced around 1797. It takes its name from sake also may have originated in China, not Japan. Contrary to urban legend, Jägermeister does not contain elk blood. The founder was an avid hunter, and the name Jägermeister literally translates to hunt master. What's the difference between brandy and cognac? All cognac is brandy, but not all brandy is cognac. Brandy refers to any distilled spirit made from fermented fruit juice. Cognac is a type of brandy from the Cognac region in France. Strict rules govern where the grapes must be grown and how the spirit is then produced. Tarantula brandy is a popular drink in Cambodia. Ugh. The 1808 Rum Rebellion in Australia kicked out New South Wales Governor William Bligh when he got in the way of the colony's rum business, among other things. The main difference between Scotch and whiskey is geographic. Ingredients and spellings can differ too. Scotch is whiskey made in Scotland and spelled without an E, while bourbon is whiskey made in the US. I didn't know that. That teaches me a lot. Scotch is made mostly from malted barley, while bourbon is distilled from corn. If you ask for a whiskey in England, you'll get Scotch, but in Ireland you'll get Irish whiskey. After a Tennessee whiskey, like Jack Daniel's for example, is distilled, it's filtered through sugar maple charcoal. Cool. Alright. Next category is going to be space facts, and today's category is about Galileo. Galileo was born in Florence, Italy in 1564. Galileo pioneered the use of the telescope to observe celestial bodies, advanced our understanding of physics, and famously demonstrated that objects of unequal weight fall at the same speed. In 1542, Nicholas Copernicus had proposed a heliocentric model in which the planets orbit the sun. Without physical evidence, however, it was widely rejected by authorities and leading scientists. In 1609, Galileo first heard about the invention of a telescope in Holland. Intrigued by this new invention, he set out to build his own. Galileo's designs eventually improved the telescope's magnification by as much as 30 times, fundamentally changing their use from terrestrial observation to astronomical observations. He observed and drew the mountains and craters of the moon in great detail. Galileo discovered several of the moons of Jupiter. Not everything in the solar system revolved around Earth. He observed the phases of Venus. In 1610, Galileo published a catalogue of his discoveries, the Sidereus Nuncius, which made him famous throughout Europe. Armed with his discovery of the phases of Venus, which proved that Venus was orbiting the sun, Galileo began to publicly advocate for a suspect of heresy, Galileo was sentenced to house arrest, under which he would remain for the rest of his life. While under house arrest, Galileo wrote one of his finest works, Discourses of Mathematical Demonstrations relating to two new sciences. In it, he laid out his findings over the past 30 years of scientific study. The two new sciences were the motion of objects and strength of materials. They laid the foundation for kinematics and material engineering. In the same work, Galileo first proposed the idea that bodies of different masses fall at the same rate. This would be demonstrated by Apollo 15 astronauts on the moon, as well as the behavior of bodies in motion, the principal relativity of motion, and the nature of infinity. Among his numerous contributions to astronomy, Galileo was the first to observe that the Milky Way was composed of stars. The father of modern science died in 1642 at the age of 77. In 2016, the Juno spacecraft arrived at Jupiter carrying a plaque in his honor. That is very, very cool. Crazy that he was like so incredibly smart and was like convicted. I don't know. Okay. Next is arts and culture facts, and these are facts about dance. And you may know I'm a dancer, so I'm excited about these. Alright. The first archaeological proof of dance comes from 10,000-year-old rock and cave paintings. David Meenan holds the world record for greatest distance tap danced. He tap danced 32 miles in 7 hours and 35 minutes at a track in New Jersey in October 2001. The Greek word kora, meaning source of joy, is related to the word koros, for Greek meaning dance. According to Plato, dance gave the body its just proportions. In ancient Greek mythology, 9 muses were associated with each one of the arts. Terpsichore was the muse of dancing. Ballet began in Italy around 1500, when Catherine de' Medici of Italy married the French king Henry II. She introduced early dance styles into court life in France. From Italian roots, ballets in France and Russia developed their own stylistic character. Dancing on point became popular during the early part of the 19th century. Every time a ballerina jumps on point, 3 times her body weight falls on the tip of her big toe. As a teenager, rapper Tupac Shakur was a ballet dancer. He was a member of the 127th Street Ensemble, a Harlem-based theater company. Salsa is derived from the Spanish word for sauce, which refers to the hot and spicy flavor of the dance. Germany suffered a plague of uncontrollable dancing in 1518. The dancing plagues, or dancing manias, occurred sporadically throughout Western Europe from the 14th to 17th centuries. Victims were seized by an uncontrollable urge to dance. For unknown reasons, people danced until they collapsed from exhaustion or died. Is that true? My goodness. The film Footloose is based on a true story. An Oklahoma town outlawed is the state dance of Hawaii. In the Korean fan dance, dancers use large fans painted with blossoms to create formations that represent birds, butterflies, dragons, flowers, and waves. The greatest number of consecutive fouettes on tournant is 166. Man, I could never. I can do like 8. I suck at turning. It was achieved by Delia Gray at the Harlow Ballet School's summer workshop on June 2nd, 1991. Interesting. During one of Elvis Presley's early performances, cameras would only show him from the waist up. His gyrating hips were considered shocking. The world's largest conga line consisted of 119,986 people. The record was set in Miami, Florida on March 13th, 1988. Square dance is the official state dance of Massachusetts, Mississippi, Illinois, Idaho, Oklahoma, and Oregon. The most popular ballet in the world is Tchaikovsky's The Nutcracker, first performed in 1892. Originally, rumba was a synonym for party in northern Cuba. In 1996, an estimated 72,000 people took part in the world's largest chicken dance in history at the Canfield Fair in Ohio. Michael Flatley of Riverdance and Lord of the Dance was once the world's highest paid dancer, earning $1.6 million a week at his prime. Whoa. That's nuts. Johann Strauss II, who composed over 500 waltzes, did much to popularize the dance, but its origins trace back to the 16th century. The world's largest Charleston dance consisted of 1,096 participants, and it was achieved in Shrewsbury, UK on September 22nd, 2018. Interesting. That's kind of cool. Okay, I think the last category is the people category. Let's see if we have, I don't think I chose one already, which, oops. Let's see. Apologies, stand by. Okay, let's do some facts about Vlad the Impaler. Just a few. The origins of Dracula, the blood-sucking vampire of Bram Stoker's novel and countless movies, are commonly traced to a 15th century Romanian noble. His brutal and bloody exploits made him both a national folk hero and an object of horror. The late 1300s and early 1400s were a dramatic time in the area, now known as Romania. Vlad III Tepes was born into the ruling family of Wallachia, a principality precariously balanced between the Ottoman and Holy Roman empires. Wallachia was an elective monarchy, with political backstabbing between the royal family and the boyars, the land-owning nobles. His father, Vlad II, became known as Dracul, or Dragon, due to his initiation into the knightly order of the Dragon. As a part of Dracul's attempt to maintain Wallachia's independence, he sent Vlad III and his brother Radu as hostages to the Turks. Let's see. Dracul was assassinated in 1447, and a rival branch of the family took over. The Turks helped Vlad III recapture the throne briefly as a puppet ruler. 8 years later, Vlad III, known as Dracula, or son of Draco, regained the throne with Hungary's backing and ruled for 6 years. Dracula faced several obstacles to independence and control. Lawlessness and disorder were also prevalent. Dracula's successes against these obstacles are the source of the admiration that still pervades local folklore. His methods, however, are the source of his portrayal elsewhere as a sadistic despot who merited an alternate meaning of Dracula, namely devil. He eliminated poverty and hunger by feasting the poor and sick, and after dinner burning them alive in the hall. Dracula eliminated disloyal boyars by inviting them to an Easter feast, after which he put them in chains and worked them to death, building his fortress. My goodness. Vlad's favorite method of enforcement was impaling, a gruesome and purposefully drawn out form of execution in which victims were pierced by a long wooden stake and hoisted aloft. Wow. Dracula escaped to Hungary with the help of a secret tunnel and local villagers, but was imprisoned there. He gradually ingratiated himself, and upon Radu's death, took back the throne in 1476. Just 2 months later, Dracula was killed in a forest battle against the Turks near Bucharest. The manner of his death is unknown. Wow, that's crazy. There are more facts, but I was just like, I'm very, very tired. I don't know if you can tell that I can't even read anymore. I'm so just exhausted from reading facts. It's been a long day of filming.